So we planned this for covering this topic of what do you do when you get this variation in how many applications come in, and how do you take it when it appears that you're not getting big numbers of applications. And I thought about changing this title to Fail Your Way to Success or something, because frankly, we've all had a program that just bombed, and I'm going to talk about one of those. But really, it's not about failing. It's about changing things along the way to get to where you need to be. And that's my theme. So I left the title alone. Let's see if I mastered what Martha said about moving the slide. Okay, got it. So I had fun brainstorming with other SAW staff about this topic of when programs are not really big, when they're not scaled. We serve 2 million people now in San Antonio. So if we have a program that's small, we have to ask ourselves questions about that. Do we need that program to be really big? Maybe not all of our programs are intended to be large, but we had a good time talking about categories of programs that are not large. Sometimes it's a fail. The program is not working the way it is, and we have to acknowledge that, scrap it completely and move on to something else. Other times, what we do with our very large group of customers is we segment them. We have niche programs that are intended only for people who meet very specific criteria. Plumbers to people that I'm going to talk about. You got to qualify for that. You either qualify, you're in poverty, or that's really not for you. So that program will never be huge. Other programs are targeted. We really want it for a specific type of customer. Other times we're seeing a pattern we don't like, which is people are applying and they're not finishing. That's a waste of everybody's time. So that's something we want to address. Other programs, we know we can get it to work, but we practically have to knock on their door and gift basket the program and hand it to them to get them to take advantage of it. So I'm going to go through an example of each of those and end with what we think is kind of normal fluctuation that was just talked about in the last presentation. So I'm going to lead with a program fail. The very first program that I helped evaluate was when I started at SAWS, and Dana Nichols and I were looking at the then Xeriscape rebate program that had been in place for years at SAWS. Now I have to let you know, I worked for a horticulturalist who was my boss at the time, loved this program. And it was our cornerstone program. So it was very upsetting to Dana and I to look at it, no matter how many ways we looked at the data, the fact was that we were not saving water with that program. A third of the people were using the same amount of water that they used before. A third were reducing, and you can guess what the other third were doing. They were increasing their water use enough that it washed out the savings of the other ones. So this was not good. This was not a net savings, and plus we didn't have huge numbers of people using that Xeriscape rebate program. So we started asking hard questions. Let's look at the characteristics of the savers and the people who aren't saving. And let's figure out how do we make this maybe not so ridiculously complicated or onerous to do. Now, I will fast forward on this, that we went through different iterations of landscape transformation options before landing on a current one that Juan Solas, who happens to be with us today, is running, which is a coupon-based incentive. And we went for smaller chunks of the landscape. We recognized that in that original program, a big fail was we weren't changing the irrigation system. Change the plants, don't change the irrigation system. And it was kind of, I call it a well done moment. If you leave the irrigation system exactly the way it was and people use it, of course, there's not going to be any water savings. So we ended up over time coming up with programs in landscape transformation specifically that allowed people to take smaller chunks. It gave them an incentive up front that insisted that they change the irrigation system at the same time. And we really doubled down on the other thing we realized, which is that even if we were getting people to change their plants, how do we show our affection for our pretty plants? We water them. And so we really needed to put a lot of energy into educating people that just because your plants are beautiful does not mean they're suffering and they need a lot of water put on them. Hence our Garden Style San Antonio website that we put a huge amount of effort into. So this is a complicated one, a really tough subject. Program fail, and eventually have gotten to pretty good participation on this one and decent results. But we will still be honest and tell you that as hard as Juan works on this program and he gets a lot of people to do it, it's not our biggest water saver. Changing plants will never save as much water as changing the irrigation system and reducing it. That's just what we've learned over time, no matter how many people you get to change the plants. Now I want to talk about a niche program. So niche programs are ones that are not for everyone by design. Plumbers to People, you don't get more niche than that. In order to be in Plumbers to People, you have to qualify at 125% of poverty and live in an owner-occupied home. It's not for rentals. So that program, we know who you are. At this point, SAWS has 40,000 households qualified at 125% of poverty. We can figure out who's owner-occupied. We know who these folks are. And if we think they have a high bill, we can reach out to them. Chad Cosper is here, by the way. He runs this program. And it's a very successful program, but it will never expand beyond that base because that's its design. That's the intent for it. Another one that is a niche program that's supposed to be small, I should say this one's a targeted program, is our Smart Controller residential incentive. By coincidence, Sarah Gorton's here today, and she runs this program. Now, why do I say this one's targeted? I say this one's targeted because we have found that for the residential customers, smart controllers work best when you give them to someone who's a super user. You're going to save the most water. You give them to someone who's a deficit irrigator, you might increase their water use. So with this one, we landed on anybody can apply for our smart controller coupon incentive, but we only market it to the very high users. So when Sarah is working at seeing if she can nudge some more people to participate in the program that she manages, she is selecting out with our analyst who are the highest water users, and let's present that opportunity specifically to them. Now, if some others slip in there and use it, it's not the end of the world, but we know exactly what type of customer we want to have use it. And really, they're only about 10% of our residential customers. So again, this one's not by design ever going to be huge. Be Ready Direct is another one you have to be qualified for. Chad mentioned this earlier this morning if you were listening to his presentation, and that's another one where you're pre-qualified. We haven't put that even really up on our website because we know who our customers are that we wanted to help them winterize for free. And we reached out specifically to them and we got a good response rate. But again, that's never going to be a big program. And for that, it's fine, that's okay. Now, I do want to mention though, that for these programs, any of them, we do a lot of, I keep mentioning, we'll reach out direct to those customers. So what do I mean by that? We do a lot of that. Even though I'm saying some of these aren't intended to be big, we want to go big with that niche. All of those super users I mentioned who are residential, we'd love them all to use the program that Sarah is running get a better irrigation controller and get an irrigation consult and do everything else to reduce their water use. So over the years, we've done a lot of experimenting with direct to customer, either emails or snail mails. We have an email, we're going to use the email. We get a higher response rate and faster, and plus it's nearly cheap and it's easier than folding and stuffing a bunch of envelopes to get out thousands of pieces of mail. Some of the tips, we keep it quick, we make the offer in the first sentence, we try to make it personal, try to throw in data whenever possible about how high their water use is or how much they might be able to save. People respond well to deadlines. If we're telling them something is going on in their neighborhood, tell them when that is and give them a time frame to reply. Another thing that's a mantra we've learned from behavioral economists who've helped us kind of think about these things is that we try to put the most effort into the path of least resistance, make it the easiest thing in the world to say yes. So what that means is if we are looking at a really long thing they have to read, 3 to 5 solid paragraphs, we just lost a bunch of people. People are lazy readers. They want it to be scan read. I can tell what this offer is. It's pretty bullet points. At a glance, I know what it is. And then somewhere right in the middle is that click here. And it's a simple application. And that's just human nature, is making it as easy as possible for people to say yes. And then the web application also has to be relatively easy. Our people in the web team tell me we have 3 to 5 seconds before our customers are going to be impatient and move on forever. We've all probably been there. I've been on the verge of doing something and then realized, oh, they want a unique ID from me for this? Oh, forget it. And I move on. So same thing for our applications. They can't be overly complicated. They have to be pretty bug-free to get people to use them. So I want to move on to another area where we've had to learn from, which is on some of our program models, we've seen people applying and then not finishing the program. And so an example of that would be our Patioscape coupons, where people can apply ahead of time to get a coupon that they can take to a vendor to get a discount off of the materials they need for a hardscape outdoor living area that's pervious. Now, we put out these coupons seasonally. We have a fair number of people apply. A lot of them never follow up and redeem those coupons. That is not all bad. Better that they don't redeem the coupons than that they do and don't do anything with the materials that we help pay for. But it's still bothersome. Juan here runs that program too, and it's a lot of staff time and effort. And plus, when we've looked at the data on the water savings, when people remove grass and they have a pervious patioscape, they save a decent amount of water. They're hopefully not irrigating those rocks, right? So we are going to have to say this one is a problem. We're going to revise it and try again. And so this winter, we announced as we were coming into this year that there will be no patioscape coupon, that program is over. And then in a few months, we will be, actually it's less than a few months, coming up really soon, Juan will be launching the outdoor living rebate. So this is going to be our next iteration. Hopefully it will work. And if it doesn't, we're going to try again. But the idea is that we looked at the problems with the coupon. And we said, in this case, our customers said the vendors were too limited. They want to go to Home Depot. They want to go to some other cheap place that won't take our coupons. That's a problem. They're limited to patios because of the vendors. Some of them want to do a deck. I don't really care if they have a deck or they have a patio. I just want them to get rid of the grass. So it would be nice if we could design it so they could also do a deck. We also looked at it and said, people don't know what they're doing on this, and we want them to do a good job, so this is a permanent installation. So the new program, when it launches, is going to be a rebate, so people have more vendor options. We are going to have to, in order to avoid potential fraud, have a pretty rigorous application process to show they don't already have a patio or a deck. We're going to do more for those do-it-yourself customers to make sure they understand what they're doing. And it'll be interesting to see if that solves the problem. If it doesn't, we'll try again. Now, the program model I mentioned is the one where you practically have to gift wrap the program, knock on their door, walk in, have a cup of coffee, sit down, go over it with them, and convince them to do your program. And, that would be bad if each one of those times we had to do it didn't yield a lot of savings. If it's a program that we need a scale to succeed, that would be unacceptable. But one of the programs where this has always been true is our custom rebates for commercial. Custom rebates give an opportunity for a commercial customer to come up with a way to save water and then come to us for a rebate that is priced based on the water savings. We put the value on the water, calculate it over 10 years, and then sign a contract with them. So these are a big pain. These projects, they take a long time, but each one generally yields a lot of water. Now, what has happened over the years is the planner who runs the custom rebate program, in the interest of time, will come up with something that works. Like a couple years ago, car washes. Car wash retrofits were a hot ticket thing for a couple years in San Antonio. We had a lot of car washes out there that had the higher water use equipment. So Brandon Leister, who ran this program, did a couple, got a good look at the water savings afterwards, was really confident in his cost per acre foot on it, and then started working with the people who sell the updated efficient car wash equipment and sent them out with the information on the custom rebate opportunity. They went around to the other existing car washes and did a lot of our sales work for us. And so more of those rebate applications started coming in. He had less homework to do on it, could close those deals faster. We moved through a bunch of car washes pretty quickly. So focusing on something like that is one way to make that less onerous. In other cases, when we've done these custom rebates, we've realized we're going to move on to a different model. And an example of that is for commercial smart controllers. We have done some deals, Mark Peterson sitting back here, Chad, they've worked on these, where we have negotiated, and Sarah, thank you, a custom rebate on a smart controller system. And some of them really big for customers that had over 100 controllers out there in their gigantic HOA. And we got great savings, exceeded our estimates in the contract. The customer was happy, we were happy, it was highly successful. Did a couple of those and have realized we're never going to go to scale on this highly successful model as long as they have to sign a contract and negotiate this whole thing with us. It's too onerous. Irrigators are too busy. The property managers and HOA leaders are too busy. So our next iteration that's going to come out in a couple months is going to be a menu option, because we've proved up the savings with those custom rebates, and we're going to make it a simpler process to get that smart controller incentive from us if you're a business. So started out being okay with us while we were doing proof of concept. Now we're going to try to make it easier and faster so we can go to scale. I want to end with that, even though I've said that we have a different attitude depending on the program about how many applications are coming in and what we're doing about it, we have found over the years that particularly for outdoor programs, variation is normal. And that's what you just heard in the presentation before mine. People are highly motivated by weather conditions, or seeing, in the case of Austin, seeing that lake level drop, in San Antonio, hearing that the aquifer is dropping, hearing that you're in drought restrictions. These things are motivating. We can see this in our irrigation consultation program. We have had years where we do over 3,000 irrigation consultations in a year. And then we've gone down to 2,500. And that was with marketing. But because the grass was green, people's bills weren't that high, it was going to be really tough to get it to all the way to 3,000 in a year where people were having pretty green grass. So that's in the normal range of fluctuation. Now, I will say that, say last year, 2021, I believe we were about 2,500 on our irrigation consultation number at the end of the year. That number probably would have been more like 2,000 or less had we not done the marketing. So even though it was not a year that lent itself to doing this program as much, we didn't give up. We still went through the data and said, even though it's a year when people don't need to irrigate, people are. So we can go through the bills as they come in, pick out those people who look like they have higher usage than they should, and send them something nice that says, hey, it looks like we could save you some money. Here's this great service we have, why don't you use it? Now, interesting thing about doing these direct to customer marketing. The range of response we get from customers is huge. Chad mentioned this morning that when we went to customers and said, can we winterize your house for you? We got a 40% response rate to that. That's really high for us. To send out an offer to customers directly, even though it's free and it's a great offer, and get 40% to say, yes, come to my house, that's high. On the consultation program, if it's a kind of normal summer in San Antonio and we send it to high users, an offer for an irrigation consult, 10% is pretty good. So we send it to 100 people, 10 of them say, yeah, come to my house. They're high users, we want those people, that's okay. 10% is a pretty good response rate. Anybody want to guess what the response rate was this past summer when we were getting good, well-timed rain and the grass was pretty green? How much lower was it than 10%? She said it. 2, she got it. The woman wins some pretzels from over in the basket. So yeah, it went down to 2%. So you might think, was it worth sending out those emails and those snail mail letters? I would argue yes, because especially those emails are pretty much free. So why not? And the more high users that we get, particularly when they shouldn't be watering at all, the better for our metrics in the end, we're going to save more water. So we keep it in perspective. We understand that these types of programs are going to have a lower participation when we have these kinds of years. But if we market to the super users, we can still get something out of it. And by the way, if you don't know what I mean by the OMG data, I mean, we're trying to get their attention. And if we say to them, hey, it looks like you used 50% more water than other people in your neighborhood, and that's one of the lead sentences in our communication to them, that's what I mean. Something personal that hopefully gets their attention and makes the business case to them that this could be helpful. And I think that's all I've got for you.